The sun hung high in the cloudless blue sky above Lakeside Park, casting dappled shadows through the oak trees that lined the winding paths. It was the kind of perfect Saturday afternoon that drew families out in droves, filling the air with the sounds of laughter and excited chatter. Children raced around the playground while parents chatted on nearby benches, everyone enjoying the first truly warm weekend of spring. Officer James Reynolds pulled his patrol car into the park's main lot, his mood as dark as his freshly polished boots despite the beautiful day. He'd requested a different beat 3 times now, but the sergeant kept assigning him weekend park duty. Reynolds considered it beneath him, glorified babysitting while real police work happened elsewhere in the city. He adjusted his uniform belt with practiced precision and began his rounds, scanning the crowds with a critical eye. Reynolds had been with the department for 15 years and had developed quite a reputation among the locals, particularly those from the East Side neighborhoods. Some officers connected with their communities. Reynolds preferred to keep people in line through strict enforcement. "Those kids are climbing too high on that structure," he muttered to himself, making notes on his small pad. "And someone's dog is definitely off-leash by the pond." His fingers tapped impatiently against his baton as he walked, looking for infractions to address. Across the park, 8-year-old Zoe Williams pedaled her colorful bicycle along the paved pathway, her beaded braids bouncing with each push of the pedals. The bicycle had been a birthday gift from her grandparents, just 2 weeks earlier, a beautiful purple and teal creation with streamers, flowing from the handlebars in a small basket mounted on the front where she'd carefully placed her favorite stuffed rabbit. "Stay on the path where I can see you," called her Aunt Tanya, who was spreading a picnic blanket beneath a shady tree nearby. "And remember what Mom said about the rules?" "I will," Zoe called back, her face glowing with the simple joy of freedom. She loved the feeling of the wind against her face as she rode, loved how she could go faster than anyone running. Her mom had taught her all the safety rules. Wear a helmet, watch for people walking, stay in designated areas. The park paths formed a figure 8, with the main concrete trail designated for bikes and skaters, while narrower side paths were reserved for pedestrians only. Zoe had been carefully following the main path, making wide loops and occasionally waving to her aunt as she passed the picnic spot. As she rounded the curve near the duck pond, Zoe noticed a small family of ducklings waddling across the path ahead. Not wanting to frighten them, she instinctively swerved to avoid them, momentarily guiding her bike onto one of the narrower footpaths where a small "No Bicycles" sign was posted. She hadn't noticed Officer Reynolds watching from beneath a nearby tree. "Hey, you!" he shouted, stepping directly into her path with his hand raised. "Stop right there." Zoe squeezed her brakes hard, her eyes widening with surprise and confusion. The sudden stop sent her tipping slightly, and she put one foot down to steady herself. "What do you think you're doing?" Reynolds demanded, his voice carrying across the quiet section of the park. Several nearby picnickers turned to watch the commotion. "Can't you read the sign?" "No bicycles on this path." Zoe's voice came out small and shaky. "I'm sorry, sir. There were ducks crossing and I didn't want to hit them." Reynolds' face darkened. "You think rules don't apply to you?" "That sign is there for everyone. I was just trying to go around." "Don't talk back to me," he interrupted, stepping closer. "This isn't the first time I've seen kids like you ignoring the rules here. Your parents need to teach you better." Something in his tone made Zoe shrink back, suddenly very aware of how alone she was. The way he said "kids like you" felt different, heavier somehow. "I'm sorry," she repeated, fighting back tears. "I'll go back to the main path now." "Oh, you think it's that simple?" Reynolds reached forward and grabbed the handlebar of her bike. "How am I supposed to know you won't just do this again as soon as I walk away?" "I won't, I promise. Please, my aunt is right over there." Zoe pointed toward the picnic area, but Reynolds wasn't listening. "You need to learn there are consequences for breaking rules," he said, his voice hard. With deliberate slowness, he tipped the bicycle sideways, pushing it down onto the pathway. Zoe, still holding one handlebar, was pulled off balance and fell to her knees on the rough concrete. The sound of metal scraping against pavement cut through the peaceful afternoon. The bike's front wheel bent visibly as it hit the ground, and the plastic basket cracked, sending Zoe's stuffed rabbit tumbling into the dirt. Tears sprang to Zoe's eyes, both from the shock and the stinging pain in her scraped knee, which had begun to bleed through her leggings. She stared up at Reynolds, unable to understand why a police officer, Someone her teachers had always told her was there to help would deliberately damage her beloved bicycle. "Maybe next time you'll remember to follow the rules," Reynolds said, seemingly satisfied with the results of his actions. He didn't offer to help her up or check if she was hurt. From across the path, a woman gasped loudly. "Did you see that? He pushed her bike over." The words rippled through the growing crowd of onlookers, phones already raised to capture the aftermath. That little girl barely went a few feet on that path to avoid some ducks. "Is he serious? She's just a child. Someone get her parents." A middle-aged man in a jogging suit stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "Officer, that was completely uncalled for." "She's bleeding." Reynolds turned to face the gathering crowd, his hand instinctively moving to rest on his belt near his taser. "This is police business. I'm enforcing park regulations. Please step back." The jogger didn't move. Enforcing regulations doesn't mean assaulting children or destroying their property. "Sir, I'm going to ask you once more to step back," Reynolds warned, his voice taking on the hard edge he used to establish authority. Meanwhile, Zoe sat on the ground beside her damaged bicycle, silent tears streaming down her face. Her knee throbbed, and when she reached for her stuffed rabbit, she noticed it had gotten dirty and one ear was torn. This only made her cry harder, though she tried to stay quiet. A teenage girl broke from the crowd and knelt beside Zoe. "Hey, it's okay. Let me help you up. Is your mom or dad here?" "My Aunt Tanya," Zoe managed between sniffles. "She's by the big oak tree." "I'll go get her," offered another bystander already jogging toward the picnic area. The tension between Reynolds and the gathering crowd continued to build. People had formed a loose semicircle, many with phones recording the scene. Reynolds stood his ground, though a flicker of uncertainty had begun to cross his face as he realized how many witnesses were present. "That's her aunt coming now," someone called out. The crowd parted as Tanya rushed forward, her face a mixture of concern and fury when she saw Zoe on the ground with her damaged bicycle. "Zoe, what happened?" She knelt beside her niece, immediately checking the bleeding knee. Before Zoe could answer, the jogger pointed at Reynolds. That officer pushed her bike over because she briefly went on the footpath to avoid some ducks. "Made her fall and hurt herself." Tanya's eyes narrowed as she looked up at Reynolds. "You did what?" Reynolds shifted his stance, his earlier certainty faltering slightly under her direct gaze. "Ma'am, your niece was violating park regulations by riding on a pedestrian-only path. I was simply enforcing by damaging her property and hurting her." Tanya cut him off, her voice deadly calm as she helped Zoe to her feet. "What's your badge number, officer?" The crowd had grown larger now, with several people calling out that they had the whole thing on video. Reynolds glanced around, suddenly aware that the situation had escalated beyond what he'd anticipated. "I was doing my job," he insisted, though his voice had lost some of its earlier authority. "Your job is to protect people, not bully children," Tanya responded, pulling out her phone. "I'm calling my sister right now, and then I'm filing a formal complaint." As if on cue, someone from the crowd called out, "I've already sent the video to the local news Facebook page." Reynolds' radio crackled, saving him from responding. He turned away slightly to answer it, then faced Tanya again. "I have another call to respond to. Consider this a warning for your niece." With that, he turned and walked briskly back toward his patrol car, leaving behind a damaged bicycle, an injured child, and a crowd of angry witnesses. What Officer Reynolds didn't know as he drove away was that Zoe's mother, Dr. Maya Williams, wasn't just any concerned parent. As the head pediatrician at Mercy General Hospital and a respected community advocate, she had connections throughout the city and a commitment to addressing injustice wherever she found it. The incident at Lakeside Park that sunny Saturday afternoon was about to become much more than a damaged bicycle and a scraped knee. For Officer James Reynolds, it was the beginning of a reckoning he never saw coming. By the time Dr. Maya Williams arrived at Lakeside Park, a small crowd still surrounded her daughter and sister. Maya parked her blue sedan haphazardly, grabbing her first aid kit from the trunk before rushing over. The sight of Zoe's tear-stained face made her heart clench. "Baby, what happened?" Maya asked, kneeling beside her daughter and gently examining the scraped knee. Tanya stepped forward, her voice tight with controlled anger. "That police officer, Reynolds, I got his badge number, knocked over Zoe's bike because she briefly went on a walking path to avoid some ducklings." Made her fall and didn't even check if she was hurt. Maya's expression hardened as she cleaned and bandaged Zoe's knee with practiced hands. He deliberately pushed over her bike? Yes, confirmed an elderly woman standing nearby. I saw the whole thing. Completely uncalled for. The poor child was just trying to avoid hitting those ducklings. I have it all on video, added a college-aged young man holding up his phone. Already sent it to my uncle who works at Channel 7 News. Maya thanked him, taking his contact information while Tanya helped Zoe to her feet. The bicycle lay on its side, the front wheel noticeably bent and the handlebar twisted at an odd angle. The plastic basket had cracked down one side, and the purple streamers were caked with dirt. My bike, Zoe whispered, fresh tears welling in her eyes. Grandma and Grandpa just got it for me. We'll get it fixed, sweetie, Maya promised, though her eyes told a different story as they scanned the damage. She pulled out her phone and began taking photos, documenting the bent wheel, the scraped paint, and Zoe's bandaged knee. I'm getting his badge number and name, said a middle-aged man in a running outfit. Reynolds, badge 4873. Been having problems with him for years in this neighborhood. Always targets the East Side kids especially. Maya nodded, making note of the information. Thank you, everyone, for looking out for my daughter. If any of you are willing to share your contact information or the videos you took, I would really appreciate it. Nearly a dozen people stepped forward, forming a line to share their details and send their recordings to Maya's phone. As a respected doctor in the community, many recognized her from the hospital or her frequent appearances at city council meetings advocating for better healthcare access in underserved neighborhoods. Dr. Williams, this isn't the first time this officer has caused problems, said an older man who introduced himself as Mr. Chen, the owner of a grocery store on Oak Street. Last summer, he gave my grandson a ticket for riding his skateboard in the park, but let all the other kids continue. When I tried to question why, he threatened to arrest me for interfering. Similar stories began to emerge from the gathered crowd. He always follows the teenagers from River Heights when they come to the park. My nephew was playing basketball after hours, just 10 minutes past closing, and Reynolds handcuffed him and left him sitting on the curb for almost an hour before letting him go with a warning. He yelled at my kids for being too loud near the duck pond, but said nothing to the birthday party making twice as much noise right next to us. Maya listened carefully, her phone recording these impromptu testimonials while Tanya helped Zoe into a clean pair of leggings from their picnic bag. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Officer Reynolds seemed to consistently target children and families of color, while allowing others more leeway for the same minor infractions. We've complained before, said a woman who introduced herself as the PTA president at the nearby elementary school. Nothing ever happens. They just move him to a different beat for a few weeks, then he's back doing the same thing. Maya's jaw tightened as she lifted the damaged bicycle into the trunk of her car. Well, this time will be different, she said with quiet determination. This time he picked on the wrong child. By evening, Maya had filed a formal complaint with the police department, uploaded the video evidence to her computer, and contacted 3 members of the city council with whom she served on various community boards. Zoe was tucked safely in bed with her repaired stuffed rabbit, the television in the living room playing softly as Maya made her calls. No, Councilwoman Jackson, I don't want special treatment because we know each other, Maya explained, pacing the kitchen floor. I want the same treatment any parent should get when an officer abuses his authority and hurts their child. The difference is I have the resources and connections to make sure it happens, and many parents in our community don't. After ending the call, Maya opened her laptop and began typing a careful, measured post for her neighborhood social media group. Today, my 8-year-old daughter was harassed by Officer Reynolds, badge number 4873, at Lakeside Park for briefly steering her bicycle onto a footpath to avoid hitting baby ducks. He deliberately damaged her new bicycle and caused her to fall and injure herself. I filed a formal complaint, but I suspect this isn't an isolated incident. If you or your children have had similar experiences with this officer, please contact me. It's time our community addressed this pattern of behavior. She hesitated before hitting post, wondering if she was making the right decision. Then she remembered Zoe's tears and the look of helpless confusion on her daughter's face when describing how the officer had pushed over her bike for no good reason. Maya clicked post and closed her laptop. The response was immediate and overwhelming. By Sunday morning, her inbox was flooded with messages from neighbors, fellow parents, and even teenagers sharing their own encounters with Officer Reynolds. Some had photos or videos, others simply had stories that had gone unreported because they feared retaliation or believed nothing would change. The pattern was clear. Reynolds consistently targeted people of color, particularly children and teenagers, for minor infractions that White Park visitors routinely got away with. "This is bigger than just Zoe's bicycle," Maya told her sister over coffee as they scrolled through the mounting evidence. "This is about a pattern of harassment that's been going on for years." "So what are you going to do?" Tanya asked, knowing her sister well enough to recognize the determined look in her eyes. Maya took a deep breath. "First, I'm going to make sure the police department and city council understand the scope of the problem. Then I'm going to push for actual consequences and changes, not just a temporary reassignment." By Monday afternoon, Maya's post had been shared hundreds of times across various community groups. Local news stations had picked up the story, featuring the video of Reynolds knocking over Zoe's bike alongside interviews with other families who had come forward with similar experiences. The police department issued a brief statement saying they were investigating the incident and that Officer Reynolds had been placed on administrative duty pending the outcome. "That's not enough," Maya told the reporter who called for her reaction. "This isn't about one incident. This is about a pattern of discriminatory policing that our community has endured for years. We need accountability, and we need systemic changes to ensure this doesn't keep happening." On Tuesday evening, Maya attended the city council meeting, bringing with her 20 other parents and community members who had experienced or witnessed Reynolds's problematic behavior. One by one, they approached the microphone during the public comment period, sharing their stories with calm dignity despite the emotional weight behind their words. A father described how his teenage son had developed anxiety about going to the park after being repeatedly stopped and questioned by Reynolds. An elderly grandmother recounted how Reynolds had threatened to cite her for feeding birds while ignoring others doing the same thing just yards away. High school teacher explained how a field trip to study pond ecology had been cut short when Reynolds had singled out 3 students for suspicious behavior as they collected water samples. And finally, Maya stepped forward with Zoe beside her, the little girl clutching her mother's hand tightly as Maya recounted Saturday's incident in precise, clinical detail. "My daughter avoided hitting baby ducks," Maya concluded, her voice steady despite her underlying anger. For this act of compassion, she was punished by having her bicycle damaged and her body injured by an officer sworn to protect our community. If this can happen to the daughter of a doctor with resources and connections, imagine what happens to children whose parents don't have my privileges and platform. The council chambers fell silent when she finished speaking. Even the council members who typically defended the police department looked uncomfortable. "We appreciate you bringing this to our attention, Dr. Williams," the mayor finally said, breaking the heavy silence. "I assure you we'll be looking into this matter thoroughly." "With all due respect, Mayor," Maya responded, "we've heard those promises before. This time we expect action. Our community deserves better." As they left the meeting, Maya was approached by the police chief, a man she knew professionally through hospital emergency room coordination. "Dr. Williams," he began, his expression grim, "I want you to know I take these allegations very seriously. I'd like to meet with you privately tomorrow to discuss this further." Maya studied him for a moment before nodding. "I'll be there, but I won't be coming alone, and I'll be bringing all the evidence we've collected." That night, as Maya tucked Zoe into bed, her daughter asked a question that made her heart ache. "Mom, why did that police officer hate me? I didn't do anything bad." Maya sat on the edge of the bed, choosing her words carefully. "Sweetheart, what happened wasn't your fault. Sometimes grown-ups, even ones who should know better, make bad choices because of wrong ideas they have in their heads. Officer Reynolds has been treating lots of kids unfairly, not just you. But because of what happened to you, a lot of people are working to make sure he can't hurt anyone else." Zoe considered this, her small face serious in the glow of her nightlight. "Is my bike going to be okay?" "Yes, baby. We'll get it fixed. And maybe something good can come from all this. Maybe we can help fix bigger problems too." As Zoe drifted off to sleep, Maya returned to her laptop, where dozens more messages awaited her response. The incident at Lakeside Park had become a rallying point for a community that had long endured but rarely spoken out about discriminatory treatment. Change wouldn't happen overnight, but for the first time in years, it felt possible. What Maya didn't know was that across town, Officer James Reynolds was sitting in his darkened living room, watching the news coverage of the city council meeting with growing unease. His 15-year career hung in the balance, all because of one little girl on a purple bicycle. He turned off the television, unable to bear the weight of the public scrutiny any longer, unaware that his most important lesson was still to come. 3 days after the city council meeting, Officer James Reynolds sat at his kitchen table, staring blankly at the administrative paperwork he'd been assigned. During his temporary reassignment, the E department had taken him off patrol duty while they investigated the growing number of complaints against him. His normally spotless uniform hung in the closet. Today he wore just the uniform pants and an undershirt as he slogged through mindless filing tasks. The local news had run the bicycle incident story for 3 straight days. His neighbors had grown quieter when he checked his mail. Even his fellow officers seemed to keep their distance in the break room. Reynolds told himself he was being treated unfairly. He was just doing his job, enforcing the rules that kept public spaces safe and orderly. "Dad?" A small voice interrupted his thoughts. Reynolds looked up to see his 9-year-old son Tyler standing in the doorway, his favorite dinosaur t-shirt wrinkled from sleep, despite it being almost noon. "Hey, buddy. Feeling any better?" Reynolds forced a smile, trying to push away his dark mood. Tyler shook his head, his face flushed and hair damp with sweat. "My chest feels tight again." Reynolds frowned, immediately setting aside his paperwork. Tyler had been diagnosed with asthma as a toddler, but the episodes had grown less frequent as he got older. This was the 3rd time this week he'd complained of breathing problems, which was unusual. "Did you use your inhaler this morning?" Reynolds asked, crossing the room to feel his son's forehead. "Yeah, but it didn't help much." Tyler's breathing had a slight wheeze to it, barely noticeable unless you were listening for it. Reynolds checked the boy's inhaler, nearly empty. "We need to get your prescription refilled. Let me call your mom." After a brief, tense conversation with his ex-wife, Reynolds learned that their insurance was requiring prior authorization for the refill, which could take days to process. Sandy was stuck at work and couldn't take Tyler to an urgent care center. "I'll handle it," Reynolds assured her, trying to keep the irritation from his voice. Their divorce had been finalized 2 years ago, but co-parenting still had its rough patches. He helped Tyler get dressed, growing increasingly concerned as his son's wheezing became more pronounced. By the time they got to the car, Tyler was taking shallow breaths and looking pale. "Change of plans," Reynolds decided, starting the engine. "We're going to the emergency room." The 20-minute drive to Mercy General Hospital felt much longer, with Reynolds constantly checking his rearview mirror to monitor Tyler in the back seat. The boy was using his rescue inhaler more frequently than recommended, but it seemed to be having less effect each time. "Just hang in there, buddy," Reynolds encouraged, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "We're almost there." The emergency room was busy, but the triage nurse immediately recognized the severity of Tyler's condition. His oxygen levels were dangerously low, and his skin had taken on a bluish tinge around his lips. Within minutes, they were rushed back to a treatment room, bypassing the crowded waiting area. "Severe asthma exacerbation," the nurse explained to the doctor who hurried in. "Oxygen sat 84%, not responding well to rescue inhaler." Reynolds stood back, watching helplessly as medical staff swarmed around his son. An oxygen mask was placed over Tyler's face, and a nurse started an IV line. Reynolds had faced armed suspects with less fear than he felt watching his son struggle to breathe. "Sir, I'm Dr. Patel, the resident on duty," a young doctor explained. "We're giving Tyler medication to help open his airways, but I'd like to consult with our pediatric specialist, given the severity of this attack." Reynolds nodded numbly. "Whatever he needs. She'll be here shortly," Dr. Patel assured him, then rushed off to check on another patient. Reynolds moved closer to Tyler's bedside, taking his small hand. "You're doing great, bud. These doctors are going to help you feel better." Tyler squeezed his hand weakly, his eyes wide with fear above the oxygen mask. 10 minutes later, Reynolds heard a familiar voice at the nursing station outside. "I'm here for the pediatric consult. Severe asthma exacerbation in treatment room 3? His stomach dropped as Dr. Maya Williams walked into the room, her white coat pristine and her natural hair pulled back into a neat bun. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly as she recognized him, but her professional demeanor never faltered. "Hello, I'm Dr. Williams, head of pediatrics," she introduced herself. Though they both knew it was unnecessary, she moved directly to Tyler's side, reviewing his chart and the monitors displaying his vital signs. Reynolds stood frozen, unsure what to say or do. This was the mother of the little girl whose bicycle he had damaged just days ago, the woman who had sparked an investigation that might end his career. And now his son's well-being was in her hands. Dr. Williams leaned down to Tyler's eye level. "Hi there. You must be Tyler. I hear you're having a hard time breathing today." Tyler nodded, his eyes darting between the doctor and his father. "I'm going to listen to your lungs, okay?" She warmed the stethoscope in her hands before placing it against his chest, her face serious as she listened.
"Can you take as deep a breath as you can for me?"
Tyler tried, but the effort triggered a coughing fit that left him gasping. Dr. Williams straightened up, her decision made. Tyler's experiencing a severe asthma attack that isn't responding adequately to the initial treatments. I'm going to start him on intravenous corticosteroids and add a nebulizer treatment. We'll need to monitor him closely for the next several hours, possibly overnight. She turned to Reynolds, her gaze direct and professional. "Mr. Reynolds, has Tyler had attacks this severe before?" "No," he answered, his voice rough with worry. "Nothing this bad." She nodded, making notes in the electronic chart. "Has anything changed in his environment recently? New pets, cleaning products, higher stress levels?" Reynolds hesitated, uncomfortable under her scrutiny. "He's been staying with me for the week while his mom's working overtime. But my apartment hasn't changed and he's stayed there plenty of times before." "Any changes in your life that might be affecting him?" Children often absorb stress from their parents even when we think we're hiding it well. The pointed question hung in the air between them. Reynolds knew she was aware of exactly what had been happening in his life. "There's been some work stress," he admitted reluctantly. Dr. Williams nodded without comment, turning her attention back to Tyler. "I'm going to adjust your medication to help you breathe better," she explained to the boy in a gentle voice that contrasted sharply with the clinical tone she'd used with Reynolds. "The nurse is going to hook up this machine that makes special mist for you to breathe in. It might taste a little funny, but it will help your lungs relax." Tyler nodded bravely, and Dr. Williams gave him an encouraging smile before stepping away to write orders for his treatment. Reynolds followed her to the door. "Dr. Williams," he began awkwardly, "I want to thank you for—" She cut him off with a raised hand. "Mr. Reynolds, I took an oath to provide the best possible care to every patient who comes through those doors. Your son deserves nothing less than my complete attention and expertise, regardless of any personal history between us." Her voice was calm but firm, leaving no room for argument. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to order these medications for Tyler." Reynolds returned to his son's bedside, feeling thoroughly chastised. The respiratory therapist arrived with the nebulizer equipment, and soon Tyler was breathing in medicated mist through a mask, his eyes drooping with fatigue as the medication began to take effect. Over the next hour, Reynolds watched as Dr. Williams returned several times to check Tyler's progress, adjusting his treatment plan and speaking soothingly to him about dinosaurs after noticing his t-shirt. Not once did she mention the park incident or treat either of them with anything less than consummate professionalism. By evening, Tyler's condition had stabilized enough that Dr. Williams felt comfortable moving him from the emergency department to the pediatric ward for overnight observation. "His oxygen levels are much better, and his lungs are clearing," she explained as they waited for a bed to become available upstairs. "But I want to monitor him through the night and make sure this improvement holds. Childhood asthma can be unpredictable." Reynolds nodded, relieved but exhausted from the day's stress. "Thank you, Dr. Williams. I don't know what would have happened if—" "You did the right thing bringing him in when you did," she interrupted, her tone softening slightly. "Many parents wait too long, hoping the attack will solve on its own. Your quick action likely prevented a much worse outcome." It was the closest thing to a personal comment she had made all day, and Reynolds felt strangely grateful for the small acknowledgement. As Tyler was being settled into his room on the pediatric floor, Reynolds stepped out to call his ex-wife with an update. When he returned, he found Dr. Williams sitting beside Tyler's bed, showing him pictures of her own daughter's pet turtles on her phone. And this one is speedy, even though he's actually the slowest, she was saying, making Tyler giggle despite his fatigue. She stood when Reynolds entered, handing Tyler back his stuffed dinosaur. You get some rest now, Tyler. The nurses will check on you through the night, and I'll be back in the morning to see how you're doing. Thanks, Dr. Williams, Tyler said sleepily, the medication making him drowsy. Reynolds walked her to the door of the room. Dr. Williams, I don't know how to... Mr. Reynolds, she said quietly, stepping into the hallway where Tyler couldn't hear. What happened at the park and what happened here today are separate matters. I would never allow personal feelings to interfere with a child's medical care. I know that now, he admitted. But still, after everything that's happened, you could have assigned another doctor and no one would have blamed you. Dr. Williams looked at him steadily. That would have been the easy choice, yes. But sometimes the right choice isn't the easy one. She let that sink in for a moment before continuing. Your son will be fine with proper management of his condition. We'll talk more about that tomorrow during rounds. As she turned to leave, Reynolds found himself saying, Your daughter, is she okay? After what happened, I mean, Dr. Williams paused. Zoe's knee is healing. Her bicycle is being repaired. But what she lost that day was something less tangible. Her trust in people who are supposed to protect her. She met his gaze directly. That's harder to fix than a bicycle. With that, she walked away, leaving Reynolds standing in the hallway, her words echoing in his mind as he returned to his sleeping son's bedside. For the first time since the park incident, he found himself thinking about how the little girl, Zoe, must have felt when he knocked over her bicycle. How scared and confused she must have been. The realization made him profoundly uncomfortable, like looking in a mirror and not recognizing the person staring back. As Tyler slept peacefully under the careful watch of hospital monitors, Reynolds sat in the uncomfortable visitor's chair, confronting uncomfortable truths about himself that he had managed to avoid for far too long. The morning sun streamed through the hospital window, casting warm patches of light across Tyler's bed. Reynolds had spent an uncomfortable night in the visitor's chair, waking every time a nurse came to check on his son. Now, as Tyler ate breakfast and watched cartoons, Reynolds found himself nervously anticipating Dr. Williams' morning rounds. When she entered the room, accompanied by 2 medical students and a nurse, her professional demeanor was firmly in place. She greeted Tyler warmly before examining him, listening to his lungs and checking his oxygen levels. You're doing much better today, she told Tyler with a smile. How does your chest feel? Not tight anymore, Tyler answered between bites of cereal. Can I go home? Dr. Williams glanced at her tablet. Your numbers look good, so yes, I think we can discharge you today. But first, I want to talk to your dad about some changes to your treatment plan. She motioned for Reynolds to join her near the window, while the nurse helped Tyler with his breakfast. The medical students hung back, taking notes on tablets. Tyler's asthma has clearly been under control, Dr. Williams explained, showing Reynolds the results of the pulmonary function tests they'd run that morning. His previous medication regimen isn't sufficient. I'm prescribing a different maintenance inhaler and adding a daily oral medication. Reynolds nodded, trying to focus on the medical information instead of the awkwardness between them. Will our insurance cover the new prescriptions? I've already checked with our hospital pharmacy. They'll be covered, though there's a higher copay for the new inhaler. She handed him several pamphlets. These explain the new treatment plan and list common triggers to avoid. The most important thing is consistency. These medications need to be taken every day, even when Tyler feels fine. I understand, Reynolds said. And thank you for everything. Dr. Williams regarded him for a moment, then lowered her voice. Mr. Reynolds, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've treated thousands of children, and I've seen how environmental stress can trigger asthma attacks. Whatever is happening in your life right now is affecting your son. Reynolds felt the weight of her words. The investigation, the media coverage, his own anger and defensiveness. Of course, Tyler had picked up on it all. I'm trying to fix things, he said quietly. Good. She made a note in her tablet. Tyler should be ready for discharge around noon. The nurse will go over everything with you. She turned to leave, then hesitated. My office hours are on Tuesdays and Thursdays if you need any follow-up consultation about his treatment. Reynolds recognized the opening she was offering. Actually, Dr. Williams, when things settle down here, I was hoping to speak with you about what happened at the park. With your daughter. She studied his face as if assessing his sincerity. I'll be in my office until 5 today. With that, she moved on to her next patient, leaving Reynolds to ponder what he would say when they met again. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, Tyler was settled at his mother's house with his new medications and a doctor's note excusing him from school for the rest of the week. Reynolds drove back to the hospital, rehearsing apologies in his mind, none of which seemed adequate. Dr. Williams' office was on the 3rd floor of the pediatric wing, a small space lined with medical textbooks and children's artwork. She looked up from her computer as he knocked on the open door, her expression guarded but not unwelcoming. "Mr. Reynolds, please come in." He took the chair across from her desk, suddenly feeling like he was back in the principal's office as a troublesome teenager. "Thank you for seeing me." She folded her hands on the desk. "How's Tyler doing?" "Better. His mom's watching him closely." Reynolds cleared his throat. "Dr. Williams, I came to apologize for what happened with your daughter. My behavior was inexcusable." She didn't immediately respond, letting the silence stretch between them. Finally, she said, "Why did you do it?" The directness of the question caught him off guard. In the days since the incident, no one had asked him that. Not his superiors, not internal affairs, not even himself. "Not really, he began, then stopped, realizing he didn't have a good answer. "I thought I was just enforcing the rules. By damaging a child's property and causing her physical harm." Dr. Williams' voice remained calm, but her eyes were challenging. Reynolds shifted uncomfortably. "In the moment, I saw another kid breaking the rules and not respecting authority. I've dealt with so many problems in that park over the years." "What kind of problems?" "Vandalism. Drug deals. Teenagers harassing younger kids." He sighed heavily. "But your daughter wasn't doing any of that. She was just avoiding some ducks. Yet you treated her like a criminal." Reynolds looked down at his hands. "Yeah, why?" Again, that direct question that cut through all his defenses. Reynolds found himself saying something he hadn't admitted to anyone. "Because that's how I've been trained to see certain people in certain neighborhoods. It's easier to assume the worst than to see individuals." Dr. Williams nodded slightly, acknowledging his honesty without offering absolution. "Do you understand what it feels like for an 8-year-old girl to be treated that way by someone in uniform? Someone who's supposed to protect her?" "I think I'm starting to," Reynolds said quietly, thinking of how vulnerable Tyler had looked in his hospital bed. "But I'd like to hear it from you." Dr. Williams leaned back in her chair, considering him for a moment before speaking. "Zoe came home that day and asked me if she had done something wrong. If she was a bad person. She couldn't understand why a police officer would hurt her when she was just trying to protect some baby ducks." Her voice remained steady, but Reynolds could hear the pain beneath her words. "She's been having nightmares. She doesn't want to ride her bicycle anymore even after we get it repaired." Each word hit Reynolds like a physical blow. He had never stopped to consider the lasting impact his actions might have on a child. "I'm truly sorry," he said, knowing how inadequate the words were. "I believe you are," Dr. Williams replied. "But an apology to me isn't enough. There are hundreds of children in this city who have had similar experiences with you or other officers. One moment of realization doesn't undo years of harm." Reynolds nodded slowly. "What can I do?" "That depends on what you want. If you're just looking to save your job, then I suggest you hire a good lawyer." She folded her arms across her chest. "But if you genuinely want to make amends and change, that's a longer, harder path." "I do want to change," Reynolds said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. "Seeing you care for my son despite every reason to do the bare minimum, it made me realize how far I've strayed from what I signed up to do 15 years ago." Dr. Williams studied him for a long moment. "In that case, there's something you might be interested in. I help facilitate a community dialogue series at the community center. It's a space where residents and public servants, including police officers, can have honest conversations about how to build trust and cooperation." "And you think I should attend?" "I think you should listen," she corrected. "The next session is tomorrow evening at 7. If you're serious about wanting to change, that would be a place to start." Reynolds nodded slowly. "I'll be there." "I should warn you," Dr. Williams added. "Many of the people who will be speaking have had negative encounters with police, some specifically with you. It won't be comfortable. I don't deserve comfort right now, Reynolds admitted, but I do need to understand. As he stood to leave, Dr. Williams said, "One more thing, Mr. Reynolds. If you do come tomorrow, I'd ask that you come in civilian clothes, not your uniform. The dialogue space needs to feel safe for everyone." "Of course," he agreed. And Dr. Williams, "Thank you for taking such good care of Tyler. He thinks you're the coolest doctor he's ever had." The faintest smile touched her lips. "He's a great kid. Very brave." Reynolds left the hospital with a strange mix of emotions: shame for his past actions, gratitude for his son's care, and something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope that things could be different. The community center was a plain brick building with a freshly painted mural along one side, depicting children of various backgrounds playing together. Reynolds parked across the street at 10 minutes before 7 the following evening, watching people file in. He recognized some faces from the neighborhood around Lakeside Park, including a few people who had witnessed the bicycle incident. For a moment, he considered driving away. It would be easier than facing a room full of people who had legitimate reasons to dislike and distrust him. But then he remembered Tyler asking from his hospital bed, "Dad, are you in trouble because of that little girl on the news?" His son had made the connection even before Reynolds had realized it himself. With a deep breath, he got out of his car and crossed the street. He wore jeans and a plain button-down shirt. No watch or jewelry that might hint at his profession. As he entered the community center, he saw about 30 chairs arranged in a circle in the main room. People milled around a refreshment table, some chatting in small groups, others sitting alone. Dr. Williams stood near the door, greeting attendees. She nodded when she saw him, neither welcoming nor dismissive. "You came?" "I said I would," Reynolds replied simply. "Find a seat anywhere," she instructed. "We'll be starting in a few minutes." Reynolds chose an empty chair near the back, feeling conspicuously out of place. A teenage boy sitting next to him gave him a curious glance but said nothing. At precisely 7 o'clock, Dr. Williams moved to the center of the circle. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to our community dialogue session. For those joining us for the first time, these gatherings are meant to be a safe space for honest conversation about building trust between our community and the public. Servants who work here," she explained, "the ground rules and speak from personal experience. Listen respectfully. Focus on solutions rather than just problems." Then she opened the floor for people to share their experiences. One by one, community members stood to speak. A high school student described being followed by patrol cars when walking home from basketball practice. A grandmother shared how her calls about drug activity in her apartment building went unanswered for months. A small business owner recounted having the police called on him while he was opening his own store early one morning. Reynolds listened, growing increasingly uncomfortable as he recognized his own behaviors in many of the stories. He had done these things, followed young men for no real reason, prioritized calls from certain neighborhoods over others, approached black and brown business owners with suspicion rather than assistance. Then a small voice spoke up from across the circle. "I used to want to be a police officer when I grew up." Reynolds looked up to see Zoe Williams sitting beside her aunt, the same woman who had come running to help her at the park that day. "I thought they helped people and made them safe," Zoe continued, her voice gaining confidence as she spoke. "But then a police officer broke my new bike because I went on the wrong path to avoid hurting some baby ducks. He made me fall and hurt my knee, and he didn't even say sorry." Reynolds felt every eye in the room turned toward him, though he wasn't sure how many actually recognized him without his uniform. "Now I'm scared when I see police cars," Zoe continued. "I don't ride my bike anymore, even though Mom says we can get it fixed. I don't want to go to the park, and I don't want to be a police officer anymore." The room fell silent when she finished speaking. Reynolds felt a tightness in his chest that had nothing to do with asthma and everything to do with shame. He had done this, taken a child's sense of safety and trust and crushed it as carelessly as he'd damaged her bicycle. Before he could think better of it, Reynolds stood up. "I'm the officer who damaged Zoe's bicycle," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "And I want to say I'm deeply sorry." Murmurs rippled through the room. Zoe's eyes widened in recognition, and her aunt put a protective arm around her shoulders. "I've been a police officer for 15 years, Reynolds continued, "and somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing the people I was supposed to protect. I started seeing only problems to control. What I did to Zoe was inexcusable, and I'm here tonight because I want to learn how to be better, not just to save my job, but to become the kind of officer I promised to be when I took my oath. The room remained silent when he finished speaking, the tension palpable. Then from the other side of the circle, an older man stood up. "I appreciate your honesty, Officer Reynolds," he said. "But words are easy. We've heard apologies before. What will you do differently?" It was a fair question, and Reynolds didn't have a ready answer. He looked across at Zoe, who was watching him with solemn eyes. "I don't know yet," he admitted, "but I'm here to listen and learn. I know I need to change, and I know I can't do that without understanding the harm I've caused. So I guess that's where I'm starting, by listening to all of you, especially those I've hurt." Dr. Williams stepped forward. "Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Reynolds. That's what these dialogues are about, speaking truth and listening with an open heart." She addressed the whole group. "Let's take a short break, and then continue our conversation with a focus on what changes we want to see in our community policing." As people moved toward the refreshment table, Reynolds remained in his seat, uncertain whether he should approach anyone or wait to be approached. To his surprise, Dr. Williams came and sat in the empty chair beside him. "That was a brave thing you just did," she said quietly. "Not nearly as brave as your daughter speaking up like that," Reynolds replied, looking across the room where Zoe was getting a cookie from the refreshment table. "Zoe has always been courageous," Dr. Williams agreed. "But she's also 8 years old, and her trust has been badly shaken." Reynolds nodded, watching the little girl who had inadvertently changed the course of his life. "How do I begin to make this right? Not just with Zoe, but with everyone?" Dr. Williams considered the question seriously. "You start by doing exactly what you're doing now, showing up, listening, acknowledging harm, and then you commit to the long work of change which happens day by day, decision by decision." "I'm suspended from duty right now," Reynolds said, "pending the outcome of the investigation. But whether I keep my badge or not, I want to be part of making things better." "That's a good place to start," Dr. Williams said, rising as people began returning to their seats. "Now let's hear what this community actually needs from its police officers." For the next hour, Reynolds sat in that circle and truly listened, perhaps for the first time in his career, to the people he had sworn to protect and serve. He heard their frustrations, their fears, and most importantly, their hopes for a different kind of relationship with law enforcement. As the session ended and people began to leave, Reynolds found himself standing face to face with Zoe and her aunt. The little girl looked up at him with cautious eyes, neither fearful nor forgiving. "I'm very sorry about your bicycle, Zoe," he said, crouching down to her level, "and for hurting your knee. You were doing the right thing, protecting those ducklings, and I was wrong to punish you for it." Zoe studied him for a long moment, then said simply, "My mom fixed my knee. She's a really good doctor." "Yes, she is," Reynolds agreed, thinking of how Dr. Williams had cared for Tyler. "She helped my son when he was very sick." Zoe's expression softened slightly. "Is your son okay now?" "He's getting better thanks to your mom." Reynolds hesitated, then added, "I hope someday you can feel safe riding your bicycle again." "Maybe," Zoe said, neither promising nor refusing. It wasn't forgiveness. Reynolds knew he hadn't earned that yet, but it was a beginning. As he walked to his car that evening, he felt both emotionally drained and strangely lightened, as if he had set down a heavy burden he'd been carrying for years without realizing it. The path forward wouldn't be easy. His career hung in the balance, and rebuilding trust would take far more than one evening of honest conversation. But for the first time in a very long time, Officer James Reynolds felt like he might be heading in the right direction. 6 months passed like water flowing downstream, not always smooth, often meeting obstacles but steadily moving forward. Spring had given way to summer, then to the crisp beginnings of autumn. The maple trees in Lakeside Park had begun their annual transformation, their leaves turning brilliant shades of red and gold against the clear blue October sky. On this particular Saturday morning, the park buzzed with activity as volunteers set up tables and hung colorful banners for the first annual Community Unity Day. Children darted between booths where local businesses offered games and treats, while a small stage had been erected near the duck pond for the day's speakers and performers. Dr. Maya Williams checked her watch as she arranged informational pamphlets on the hospital's health screening booth. The opening ceremony would begin in 20 minutes, and there was still so much to do. "Mom, are the bicycle safety helmets here yet?" Zoe called out, running up to the booth in her bright yellow volunteer t-shirt. In the months since the incident, she had gradually reclaimed her confidence, though certain shadows remained. "They should be arriving any minute," Maya assured her daughter. "Why don't you check with Ms. Patel at the registration table?" As Zoe dashed off, Maya spotted a familiar figure approaching from the parking lot. James Reynolds walked slowly toward the gathering crowd, not in his police uniform but in the same yellow volunteer t-shirt worn by the event organizers. He carried a large box that appeared heavy, and he was speaking animatedly with Tyler, who bounced alongside him carrying a smaller package. Maya observed the changes in Reynolds, not just the absence of his uniform, but the way he carried himself, less rigid and authoritative than before. The 6 months since their first community dialogue session had transformed him in ways either of them could have anticipated. The department's investigation had resulted in a 30-day suspension and mandatory retraining for Reynolds. Many in the community had called for harsher consequences, but Maya had surprised everyone, including herself, by suggesting a different approach during her testimony to the police review board. Officer Reynolds made a serious mistake, she had told them, but firing him won't solve the systemic problems we're facing. What our community needs is accountability paired with transformation. I believe he can become part of the solution rather than remaining part of the problem. Her recommendation had been for Reynolds to participate in a newly formed community oversight committee and to undergo specialized training in youth engagement and de-escalation techniques. To everyone's surprise, Reynolds had not only accepted these terms but had requested additional community service hours beyond what was required. Now, as he set down his box at the bicycle safety booth, Maya could see the results of that decision. Reynolds spotted her and nodded in greeting, his expression respectful but no longer guarded as it had been in the early days after the incident. "Dr. Williams," he called, "we've got the safety helmets and the repair kits. Where would you like them?" "The helmets can go on that table," she directed. "The repair kits will be part of the demonstration at 11. Reynolds nodded and began unpacking the boxes with Tyler's help. The boy had made a full recovery from his asthma attack and now served as an unofficial bridge between his father and the community members who still viewed Reynolds with caution. "Dad fixed Mrs. Chen's grandson's skateboard last week," Tyler informed Maya proudly as he arranged colorful helmets by size. "He showed me how to change the wheels and everything." "That's wonderful," Maya said, noting how Reynolds ducked his head slightly at the praise. Humility was another change she'd observed in him, a stark contrast to the defensive officer who had once knocked over a child's bicycle for a minor infraction. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a delivery truck at the park entrance. The driver hopped out and called over to Reynolds. "Got a special delivery for today's event. Where do you want it?" Reynolds checked his clipboard. "That would be the bicycle donation. Bring it over to the main pavilion, please." As the driver unloaded a dozen new bicycles of various sizes, a small crowd gathered to watch. The bicycles gleamed in the morning sunlight, red, blue, green, purple, each with a ribbon and safety flag attached. "What's all this?" asked an elderly woman who had been setting up the bake sale table. "It's the department's community outreach initiative," Reynolds explained. "These bikes will be given to kids from the youth center who completed the safety program." What he didn't mention was that the initiative had been entirely his idea. Proposed during a tense meeting with his superiors when he returned from suspension, the department had initially been reluctant, citing budget constraints until Reynolds had volunteered to raise the funds himself through a series of neighborhood cookouts and car washes involving off-duty officers. The effort had done more than just raise money for bicycles. It had begun the slow, difficult process of rebuilding trust between the police department and the community they served. Officers who participated found themselves having actual conversations with residents rather than just responding to calls, while community members began to see the humans behind the badges. As volunteers wheeled the bicycles toward the pavilion, Maya noticed Zoe standing at a distance watching the procession with an unreadable expression. Despite all the progress of the past months, Zoe had not returned to cycling. Her repaired bicycle remained in the garage, a silent reminder of trauma not yet fully healed. The opening ceremony began with speeches from the mayor and several community leaders. including Maya herself, who spoke briefly about the importance of health equity and community cooperation. As people applauded politely, the Master of Ceremonies announced that Officer James Reynolds had a special presentation to make. A murmur ran through the crowd as Reynolds stepped onto the small stage. Many still associated him with the bicycle incident, despite his efforts at redemption over the past months. "Good morning," he began, his voice steady but lacking the authoritative tone he once relied on. "6 months ago I made a terrible mistake in this very park. I abused my authority and hurt a child who had done nothing wrong except try to protect some ducklings." He paused, looking out at the faces watching him, some supportive, others skeptical, most somewhere in between. "That mistake forced me to confront some uncomfortable truths about myself and the way I'd been doing my job. It would have been easier to get defensive or to blame others. But thanks to this community and your willingness to engage in honest dialogue, I've had the opportunity to learn and grow instead." Reynolds gestured toward the pavilion where the new bicycles were displayed. "Today I'm proud to announce that our department's Youth Bicycle Safety Program has officially partnered with the Community Center to provide not just these bikes for deserving kids, but ongoing safety education and regular community rides led by officers who volunteer their time." The announcement drew applause, particularly from those who had worked with Reynolds on the initiative over the past few months. He raised a hand to quiet the crowd. "But there's one more bicycle that needs a special home," he continued. 6 months ago I damaged a child's bicycle out of misplaced authority and bias. Today I'd like to take a small step toward making that right." He gestured toward the side of the stage where Tyler appeared, carefully guiding a bicycle that made Maya's breath catch. It was purple and teal, with streamers flowing from the handlebars and a small basket mounted on the front. An exact replica of the one Zoe had been riding that fateful day. "Zoe Williams," Reynolds said, his voice gentler now. "This is for you if you'll accept it. It comes with my deepest apology and my promise to continue working to be the kind of officer you and every child in this community deserves." The crowd fell silent, all eyes turning to Zoe, who stood frozen beside her mother. Maya placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. "It's okay if you're not ready, sweetheart," she whispered. "No one will be upset." Zoe looked up at her mother, then back at the bicycle gleaming in the morning sun. After a long moment, she stepped forward, walking slowly toward the stage where Reynolds and Tyler waited with the bicycle. When she reached them, Zoe ran her hand carefully over the handlebars, examining the bicycle from every angle. "It looks just like my old one," she said quietly. "I had help getting all the details right," Reynolds admitted, nodding toward Tyler. "My son remembered what it looked like from the news stories." "I told Dad about the basket and the streamers," Tyler added proudly, "and how the seat had purple stars on it." Zoe circled the bicycle once more, then looked up at Reynolds with serious eyes. "Why did you do it? The bad thing, I mean." A hush fell over the nearby crowd, everyone straining to hear Reynolds' answer to this direct question from a child. Reynolds crouched down to Zoe's eye level, his expression somber. "I was wrong, Zoe. I was carrying around anger and bad ideas in my head that made me treat people unfairly. I saw you on that path. I didn't see a kind little girl trying to protect ducklings. I made unfair assumptions instead of taking the time to understand what was really happening." "But you're different now?" she asked, still uncertain. "I'm trying to be," Reynolds answered honestly. "Every day I work on being better than I was yesterday. Sometimes I make mistakes, but I'm learning to listen more and judge less." Zoe considered this, then asked, "Do you still help people even though you don't wear your police clothes anymore?" Reynolds smiled slightly. "I do still wear my uniform when I'm working, but my job has changed. Now I work with the Community Engagement Unit. Instead of just looking for people breaking rules, I help connect people with resources they need and teach kids about safety." "Like bicycle safety?" Zoe asked, glancing at the helmet attached to the handlebars of her new bike. "Exactly like that," Reynolds confirmed. Zoe touched the bicycle seat thoughtfully, then looked toward her mother, who had moved closer to the stage. Maya gave her daughter an encouraging nod. "Thank you for the new bicycle," Zoe finally said. I might try riding it, but maybe not today." "Whenever you're ready," Reynolds assured her, standing up. "The bicycle is yours no matter what." Tyler, who had been watching the exchange intently, suddenly spoke up. "We could walk it in the parade today if you want. You don't have to ride it yet." Zoe brightened at this suggestion. Can we, Mom? Of course, Maya agreed, stepping onto the stage to join them. That's a wonderful idea. As the opening ceremony concluded and the crowd dispersed to enjoy the various activities, Reynolds found himself standing beside Dr. Williams, watching their children examine the details of Zoe's new bicycle together. Thank you, he said quietly, for giving me the chance to make amends. You've done more than make amends, Maya observed. You've become a catalyst for real change in the department, the mentoring program, the youth engagement initiatives, the community oversight committee. These are making a difference beyond just one incident. Reynolds nodded, watching as Zoe tentatively sat on the bicycle seat while it remained stationary, getting used to the feel of it. I had a good teacher, he said. Someone who showed me what it means to put aside personal feelings and focus on what's best for everyone. Maya smiled slightly, remembering the day she had treated Tyler in the emergency room. We all have our moments of choice, opportunities to rise above circumstance and show our better selves. Some of us need more obvious reminders than others, Reynolds admitted ruefully. The community parade began forming near the park entrance, with Zoe and Tyler leading Zoe's bicycle to join the procession. The announcer called for all participants to take their places. I should help with the first aid station, Maya said, preparing to leave. And I need to coordinate the bicycle safety demonstration after the parade, Reynolds added. Before they parted ways, Maya asked a question that had been on her mind for some time. Do you ever regret that it took such a public incident to bring about these changes? Reynolds watched his son laughing with Zoe as they decorated the bicycle with additional streamers for the parade. I regret hurting a child, he said honestly. I regret that it took something so unnecessary and harmful to wake me up. But I'm grateful every day for the chance to become someone better than I was. As the parade began its route around the park, with Zoe and Tyler proudly walking the purple bicycle at the front, community members of all ages and backgrounds fell in behind them. Officers in uniform walked alongside civilian volunteers, local business owners marched with school teachers, and senior citizens rolled alongside young parents pushing strollers. From her position at the first aid station, Maya could see the colorful procession making its way through the park, past the duck pond where it had all begun, around the playground where children now felt safer, and toward the future they were building together. Step by step, none of them, not even Maya herself, could have predicted that a moment of injustice on a spring afternoon would spark such meaningful change. The damaged bicycle had become a symbol of something larger, a community's determination to heal old wounds and build new bridges of understanding. And as Zoe gradually grew more comfortable with her new bicycle throughout the day, even sitting on it while Reynolds held it steady during the safety demonstration, it became clear that some journeys begin not with a bold leap forward, but with the simple courage to try again after falling. By late afternoon, as the event wound down and volunteers began cleaning up, Maya spotted Zoe sitting on her bicycle at the edge of the main path, feet planted firmly on the ground, looking thoughtfully toward the section where she had encountered Reynolds 6 months earlier. Ready to go home, sweetheart? Maya asked, approaching her daughter. Zoe looked up, determination crossing her face. I want to try, Mom. Just to the bench and back. Will you walk beside me? Maya's heart swelled with pride at her daughter's courage. Of course I will. I'll be right here the whole time. As Zoe pushed off and began to pedal slowly down the path, Maya walking protectively at her side, she caught sight of Reynolds loading the last of the safety equipment into his car across the park. He paused, watching them for a moment, then raised a hand in a small wave of acknowledgement. Maya nodded in return, a simple gesture that spoke volumes about how far they had all come. Some lessons came at great cost, but their value was measured in the change they inspired, in individuals, in systems, and in communities willing to do the difficult work of growing together toward something better than what had come before.